How many of you came here just for the title? Because you think the title is cool. Cool. So I hope I keep it up the expectations. A little bit about me. I'm Ardita Karaj. I'm one of the organizers of this event, and I am also a speaker. I'm an Agile coach that work in Toronto area, and I've been doing this for quite a bit, so quite passionate about it. I don't have other hobbies. This is my hobby. This is what I do. I love it, so it's all good together. My company, it's Tango, and our goal is all focused around continuous delivery. And we have passion about it, so Tango, whoever plays Tango or knows about Tango, there's a lot of passion in Tango, so we decided to bring that forward. So, how many of you have been in situations where a new story comes? The product owner comes and says, oh, we have a new story. And the team is like, okay. Didn't we just have the sprint planning? Like, how is the story coming here, right? Oh, but we do Kanban. We can bring everything, right? Because it's Kanban. Yeah, but how did it get to our backlog? And how did it get quickly prioritized so we can start now right away? Oh, no, but it's small. Like, just let's spend a little 10 minutes. Let's look into it. And we have this 10-minute conversation, and, well, it's not as small as you think it is, right? So we start having these conversations now between product owners and the teams. And the team says, it's not small, it's big, so tell me what you want, what you really, really want. We're not going to do the whole thing, it's too big. And the product owner says, oh, but I want it all, and I want it now. Right? So what do we do? Where do we go from here? Well, one way is to, you know what? We have to do this. Let's get into it. Let's punch the clock. And let's work hard. I'm pretty sure you probably have been in situations like these. You have seen this happening. I don't want to talk about that because I'm trying to get to a place where we work smart instead of hard. So, we need to ask again. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. So let's talk about how can we work smart. One of the greatest tools out there is starting with a story mapping. How many of you know story mapping? Awesome. If you don't know it, it's one of the best tools that you can start using with Agile teams for planning. And it's great. But the only problem with that is that to start the story mapping, you kind of need to know the users. You need to know their stories, and you need to know their desires. We cannot start writing user stories if we don't know what's going on, if we haven't done any research, if we haven't talked to anyone. So starting with story mapping right away might be a little bit too early. And then everyone says, oh, I just wasted my time on this one. We're never going to use story mapping again. Let's do something else. Let's go do planning the way you used to do it. No, story mapping is awesome. But you need to start understanding a little bit your customer and their needs before that. So before story mapping, there are some questions we need to ask. And those are the questions that we are trying to create like a backlog. Don't create a backlog of user stories. Create a backlog of questions before. And go through those questions before you say, hey, we have something to do. Here are some of the questions. You can probably come up with some other ones that you think are more important on your context. But start asking some questions. Are we ready to talk about this? Are we ready to do this? There are many ways that we can do research and we can deliver something with no or with very little code change. I know it sounds crazy sometimes, but it is possible. There are so many examples, and I just put some out there, that have proven, I think Josh was also talking today, very small changes to prove and to test some ideas, right? You just move that, he just moved that clickering thing a little further and he saw the results getting better and better. It was not a big thing. He didn't change the whole site. It was something small that tested and gave him that result. But same ideas we can use. These are some of the ones that I kind of like and I have used in a stealth mode with teams that I work. Wizard of Oz. It is the kind of work that we do where we put up front something really pretty, but we don't have the whole back end to support it. Behind, it's manual, right? Because all we're trying to do is to test the idea. Is this going to work? Are people actually going to order something? Are people clicking? You don't need to build the whole thing until they really come. If nobody is clicking, why bother? So initially, you can do things like that. Just put a pretty UI and hire some students that come to work in your company and leave them deal with that until it becomes really, okay, now we need to automate because this proves that users really want it, right? And then we invest on it. A concierge MVP, a minimum viable product. It is one of those that I put there an example. This guy wanted to build a shopping cart, and he was trying to get the idea, hey, if you come to the store with a list of groceries that you want to buy, and you don't want to do the grocery, you just go to the coffee, you read a book, you relax, I do the grocery for you. Would you do it? Would you be okay with that? And he just stood there in front of the grocery store and he was asking people, if I had the service for you, would you take it for me? And he started getting a sense of, some people were like, no way, I don't want any strangers to pick my grocery. And some were like, yes, please. I have so much to do, this can be great. So he started figuring out who are his customers and who are not ever going to be his customers. He didn't build the app, he was just asking, right? Dropbox, they put initially a 3-minute video and they said, hey, if we have something for you, and they only had images, right? You do this, you drop images, you drop files, you have all the storage, would you like the service? People said, yes, I want it. And then they started building it. So a lot of things can happen without building code. Smoke test. There is now, with Google and Facebook being so much around advertisements, it is so easy to test ideas. Actually, there are companies that say, we run 1,000 tests a day. And you would say, oh my God, what is this 1,000 tests a day? Well, some of them are just a bunch of, they call them like smoke tests. You just send a whole bunch of advertisements on a Facebook or on Google with a different color or a different location or a different way of advertising a product or even a difference in price. And it is so easy. You're not changing anything on your website. You're not changing anything on your product. You're just testing the idea. Are people going to like this price or no? Is the price the problem to begin with? Because maybe the price is not the problem. Is the location of a button a problem? Do we get better results if the button is here? Is the color that is might give us better results? So little things like that don't need too much code changes. They can be done, again, directly. Virgin test is the Virgin airline. Well, that probably is not too much into the software, but keep it in mind. What they did is they started with one airplane doing only one trip. They figured out how to move people from one city to one city using only one airplane and coming back. They figured that out, they nailed that, and then they decided to build more. Okay, now we can have more airplanes, more trips, more. And now Virgin Airlines is quite big. So think of examples like that. Think of researches, think of explorations, think of ideas to discover that you can do without much changes. It is, have you ever seen this before? I know some of you have. Is the dual track. And it is one of the nice ways that Jeff Patton explains how discovery and delivery work together. Very often we make the mistakes of having one team to do the discovery, and then whatever they find, they pass it along, and now is a delivery team that takes it. Well, whatever this team learned about the discovery, this team hasn't learned. So they cannot take now over and do the delivery because they have to learn the mistakes that these guys figured out. So what we do is we have the same team that does the exploration and the delivery. And there are different circles there that you start with. You start with the discovery and you say, hey, what are the opportunities? Like, let's look at them. Let's do some small researches or some small experiments. If it doesn't work, it's so easy to just throw it away and put it in the bucket, in the trash bucket, and say, hey, this doesn't work. If it's necessary, we would deliver something small. Again, try to keep it small. And then whatever we learn there, he actually says is potentially shippable. Doesn't mean we have to ship it, right? We can only probably show it to customers. Whatever we learn from here, we then take it out and we start doing another discovery cycle. And while we do that, we also build something that actually can be shippable, right? So it's these dual circles that go hand to hand. You don't do one and then the other. You do them slowly, small portions, each after each other, one after each other together. And this is how we want to start setting up ourselves for planning. There's no need for big roadmaps, plans. This is how we start creating our approach, how we're going to get this thing done, right? Definitely something to try in your organizations with your teams. It gives you that sense of experimentation and testing and trying things out before committing to something big. There are also some things that we need to talk about. Sometimes we are doing something that is completely new. And something that is completely new, sometimes we need to ask, well, is something that we have done before? If we haven't done before, is another team in our company that has done before? Maybe we can go and ask them and they know about it and we can shortcut some of the learnings but get their experience. Has any unicorn done this before? Right? And Amazon, Google, has any of these guys done that before? If nobody has done that before, you are probably facing something really complex, really new, really nobody has done it before. So you cannot just say, oh, let's write a story mapping here. Let's start writing some user stories. No. You need to stop and experiment. You need to stop and try some things. You need to stop and do some proof of concepts or something just to prove that this idea is feasible. So start thinking like that before committing. One big thing that I'm passionate about is the concept of learning releases. We have this desire that everything that we put in production is going to give us money, right? It's going to bring revenue, ROI, and all of that. And we forget that most of the times before we start earning, we need to learn. Because without knowing what exactly users are looking for, what they want, we cannot bring to them the product that they are willing to pay, right? Customers tell you that they love what you produce when they pay for what you do. And to learn that they are willing to pay for your product, you need to do some learning before. So something can go on production and is not going to don't expect to get money out of it, expect just learning. So learning releases versus earning releases. When we have some of those things in place and we have a certain idea on how we're going to work together, definitely we need to prioritize and prioritize continuously. The question we want to ask is not what are we going to do 6 months from now. It's what are we going to do today. Because every day you have opportunities to find the most important thing to do. So prioritize ruthless. How do we do prioritization? I know that sometimes prioritization is done by who screams the loudest or who is the most important sponsor and all of that. That hasn't proven to be right most of the time. sometimes probably. But it is not the most scientific way to prioritize. There are other ways that we can start using. And there are here some ideas. I don't know if any of you uses metrics when you start comparing different types of work that you are trying to start. There are things like cost of delay or cost of delay divided by duration. Click-through rate. Click-through rate is something that websites really, really measure, because that's how they measure their traffic, that's how they measure their marketing events. But maybe that's one metric that we want to use. Or are we trying to increase more customers? Or what are we trying to do? Find a metric there. Very often, we put deadlines in our projects or work that we start. And sometimes the deadlines are not real. Sometimes are kind of imposed. So we want to understand a little bit what is really. Is it really a deadline? If it is a true deadline, we need to start thinking backward. When do we start? Because if this is the day we're going to end, that means that we need to understand how much work is required to really reach the value we want to bring in this deadline. And what does it mean when do we start? It's not about when we end anymore. It's about when we start. So this is a concept that really we need to start becoming more familiar, because when we start is what decides now what other job needs to go on the backlog so that we can start this thing that is important. What is something that should be put on hold so that this work can start? So think about that. There is an example there that I put. I was working with some teams, and they had to work on 4 features for 4 customers. The features were very similar. It was almost the same feature, but had different customization in some areas. So the time and the effort was almost the same. And they were like, OK, let's start 4 of them. And then we started talking about it. Does it make sense to start 4 of them? Are 4 of them waiting for this? And then we said, you know what? Let's start with 2 first. Learn from them while we do these 2. These other 2 are not really urgent. They can wait. So we put the other 2 on the next round, finished these 2, a lot of learning on those, and then we started the other 2 much easier, much faster than we thought. So plan small. We want to do the smallest thing possible, and there is that saying that if you're not embarrassed by it, you release too late. That doesn't mean that you should be embarrassed because it has bugs and has defect and doesn't work. You should be embarrassed because probably it doesn't have all the whistles and bells, but it does the functionality, because what you're trying to do is learn again, right? The smallest thing possible. So some of the questions we want to ask around that: what is the real problem that we're trying to get to? What are the real customers? Sometimes we think that our sponsor is the customer, and we forget that we're producing something that is for someone else. And we need to focus on that someone else, and we need to talk about their needs and those people. What is the real deadline and urgency? What are we avoiding here? Is there something we're avoiding? And what do we really need by this deadline? So I kind of touched a little bit earlier. If we have a deadline, do we need to do all whistles and bells, or is there something more important to have nailed well before that, and then we put the whistles and bells after? There was an example there. Again, I was working in a company that they had to create some forms that were about the insurance and compliance. And this company came and said, oh, is this compliance form that needs to be now done, and we want it for the whole Canada, and we want it right away. And we started, OK, you kind of are late already on this, because it had to be done earlier. Which one is your customer that is asking you the strongest, the loudest? And we figured out it was the province of Quebec. Out of all the provinces, Quebec was the one that was saying, we're missing this and we need it now. So in Quebec, we said, well, Quebec has French and English. So what is the very first thing we want to do? And we decided French. So the very first thing we did was getting that form ready in Quebec for French. And then we added English, and then we added the other provinces, and it was easier from there. But start thinking small, hit the customer that has the highest need first, and then include the others after. I tried to put together here some of the things that we do. So I mentioned before story mapping, then a story mapping to find that minimum viable product and prioritization. Then we start the execution where we do collaboration, but we go back and forth, right? We do a test first build. We all build like that, right? We do test first and then we develop, right? Right? Okay. If you don't, you should. And then we close the loop and we ask, hey, how did this work? Did you get what you wanted? So if you think about it, the intake and the closing, they go hand to hand, because everything that we learn from the closing feeds the intake. It comes and it says, hey, this is the next thing we want to do. This is what we learned. This is what we need to do. And then the execution just supports all of that learning. So when we start execution, collaboration, I cannot mention you how many times I have found that when people collaborate, things get done faster, better, in a more fun way, even actually, because you work together, everyone brings their experience, everyone brings their knowledge, and you share it right away. There's no handoffs, or there's no delays, no waiting. You work together. So creating cross-functional teams is something really important. That is going to help you. If you want something done fast and you want it now, like the product owner wants, get a group of people that know about this and get them to work together. Create a cross-functional team. Make sure that everything that we need to be successful is there. So the customers. Are the customers available? Are the teams in an environment where they can collaborate? Do we have the space that is available? And if people are remote, do we have the tools that help them to talk with remote people? So think about all of these things and create an environment, create a system where people can work together and get things done. People don't collaborate just because you tell them, hey, collaborate now. You need to create a system, and then they will collaborate. The other thing that I really find important is to have a strong technical backbone. No matter how much we experiment and we do these researches and we get ready, it comes a time of execution where we want something small, something quick that can go through our development and testing and get us through that loop that we can now start learning. But if development and testing are not up to date, we don't have automation tests, we are worried to push a small change in production because it might blow up the whole thing. If we are worried that what we do is going to affect now something else because our code is so complicated and complex and intertwined, then we are not going to really benefit from all these other beautiful things that we're doing, right? So we can do as much of these beautiful things before, but we're not going to benefit if our technical backbone is not there. So try to do some tests. When the technical backbone is there, when you start not fighting the technical depth, but build technical wealth and make your technical side stronger and stronger, you can be really cool on doing some tests, right? You can do those dark launches. You release something to a small group of people and they test it before, and then you decide to go big. You can do A/B tests. You can put for the same page 2 different versions and see which one gives you better results. You can do that blue and green, so you can deploy at any time because you have a backup always ready. So all these cool things DevOps and XP brings, try to support your teams on those. So if I have to put it all together, we need to do research before we decide, and we need to do a prioritization continuously to get the smallest thing. we need to collaborate, and we need that strong technical backbone. The whole idea is to optimize for value. Don't optimize about getting people busy. Don't optimize about doing the best plan. Don't optimize about doing the best design. Everything evolves. Optimize for value. What is the most important thing that is going to help us? What is that little value that is going to, when we give it in the hands of the customer, is going to make them awesome? You heard Josh today, right? Making the customers awesome. So think about all of those and optimize for value. I wanted to bring some examples. I want to cut it. I know that the time is running short, but just some examples. This is a company called Lost My Name. They do customized books for kids. So there are organizations, there are people that go and order their books, and then at the end they have this option to wrap the book. And for the longest time they had only one wrapper, the one with the monkey. And someone said, hey, if we add more wrappers, we might see better results and people are being more excited. We can put different prices, play with it, and all of that. Now, to add a new wrapper, it meant that they had to change a lot of things on the back end. They had to add the new wrapper on all their warehouses, their supply chain. People need to be now trained about understanding that there are two wrappers. You know, all of that work, when they still didn't know if adding a new wrapper was actually going to make a difference. So what they did, they just added that wrapper there, made it look like it's visible, and if someone clicked on that, they would say, sorry, come back later, we're out of stock. Which is okay, because if you leave that for a short time, you're not going to leave it for a long time. People understand, okay, it might be out. If you leave it for a long time, it might sound really fishy. But they left that for a short time, and they started seeing that people were not interested to get a new wrapper. Actually, that didn't make any difference to them. So they saved the whole expense that we were about to put on their back end to add a new wrapper, just by doing a small experiment. Another one is a company that sells cars online. They decided to start with only buying the cars, only finance, and only one brand. They did a deal with this brand and they said, listen, we want to try to sell new cars, finance only. Can we do that? And that company said, okay, I can bring some of my dealers to work with you. We did part of it, and then the dealer said, oh, no, wait. This sounds all cool, but at the end of the day, I'm keeping the car in my store, so there is some margin fee that I want to get out of this sale. So we added the margin. We tried again. Dealers are happy. We're able now to sell one type of car online, new ones, finance. After that, we then started adding more options. You can trade an old car, you can lease, you can add special features, the sunroof, the color, you can do all of that. But that was after we had proved that one transaction can go all the way through and everyone gets the benefit out of it. And then another example, we were changing completely the platform that dealers of a retail store were tracking the deliveries from the warehouse to their stores. And we had to do a completely new platform because it was outsourced before, so we needed to bring it in the house. The new platform meant that we needed a new infrastructure, new servers, new authentication, new app being built on top. So there were a lot of things that were being done at the same time. So what we decided was, we started first with a server that was like a dev server, and we said, let's pretend this is production. And we used that to, to develop, to test the load, to test everything. Meanwhile, the architects and the infrastructure we're discussing, they started building now a better list of requirements for the servers, for the testing and for production. So while developers were testing here, we now had a new, better environment in place. We moved the code, we tested here, and everything was going on. Meanwhile, we had even the dealers, the end users, to test. So continuously, without having anything yet finalized in infrastructure, we had everything tested beforehand. So when we moved to production, everyone was ready. Infrastructure was tested, users were tested, app was running, and authentication was all done. So to close everything, I think just like the Freddie Mercury and the Spice Girls are both from England and they both love music and they had those things together, we also need to create teams that have a purpose. We don't need heroes. There's no need for these product owners or teams to stay late to work and punch the clock. We can be smarter. So no need to be heroes. We just need to collaborate better with each other. We need to always discuss as a team, create those cross-functional teams that help each other. And we need to get the right thing done right. Find that right thing that it is and do it right. And we need to do that many times without too much drama, sustainably. So I think I have like 4 minutes for questions. Oh, and feedback. Don't forget feedback cards. But 4 minutes for questions.
So Ardita, can you give some numbers behind those experiments? Because when we're working with a lot of clients, a lot of it is just if I get more clicks on the wrapping, for example. But how do you really make a decision that you're comfortable is reasonable and it's not just everybody's friends clicking on that? Where it goes, whatever it might be.
So the monitoring. You need that monitoring system in place. And we need to be smart about having a system that actually tracks users' activities on the website and able to bring that data so we can analyze. So analytics and all of that help us making decisions. You are right, we cannot just throw something out there and oh, this is it. We're getting 100 more clicks and this must be it. There's got to be some sense of what is, for example, the most requests that we have had, and see how those requests now are splitting if we add another option. And are those requests coming probably from the same IP or from the same country? And you can start now saying, well, you know what, maybe in US this doesn't seem like it's hitting what people like, but in Europe people are loving it. So then you can segment your market and you can make those decisions. So it is some science behind. And you need those product owners to be smart and to have the data in hand, some analytics to make the decisions. Definitely use data for decisions. Any others? How many of you do any of the things that I mentioned? You do? Awesome, awesome. So what is something that you are not doing that you can start doing?
Good collaboration.
Collaboration. Mm-hmm.
We can talk about collaboration, although sometimes it's easier to say than to do, especially when different groups have different interests, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you said, for different business partners, the value means different things, and even prioritization becomes a complex exercise.
Yeah.
When they're competing priorities.
Yeah, definitely. So bring all the parties involved together and let's prioritize and do this together. Collaborate. How about the technical stuff? Do you have those? Do you have the technical wealth that supports these kind of experiments that you want to do? You do? No?
No, that's the problem.
That's the problem? Okay. So maybe something better to do. So how about the fact that you can do a research before you start the work? Personally, I have seen many cases. I still see where just because we have some money, let's start some work. Do we still do that? No? Okay. Some no, some well, I hope you can I hope you got some examples here. I hope you got some ideas. But go and challenge those. Let's not do something, let's not work hard, let's work smart. Thank you.
Thank you.